So, the Firefield tutorial. Let's get started. Yeah, we are back. Firefield is a very interesting track. I'm choosing to show 4 different strategies here that I've prepared, starting with a simple grip style strategy that will very easily beat the Staff Ghost, up to the current strategy that is being used for the world record. This is one of 2 tracks in the game that go up to 10 out of 10 difficulty. In fact, I would say this is the one track in the game that has the absolute hardest strategy that is being used at this point. And it will also reflect back in other strategies that are easier, that will also be quite tough. But the first strategy at least should be doable. So let's get started. And if there are any questions in the chat, I'll be happy to answer them and show you. So let's start with the first strategy. Yeah, so there are some interesting points on the Firefield track, such as the ramp leading up to a zigzag jump. You can see a lot of turns on the road there, and the idea is to fly over those, because you're gonna lose a ton of speed, of course, if you land in the middle of that stuff. But you don't want to fly too far over those, so you have to find an optimum for your diving angle, boosting pattern, etc. The zigzag pattern in the road is also going to be a major challenge for later strategies when you set up bigger dives there, because the checkpoints do matter. So they can make you crash very easily if you go overboard setting up your double tap diving angles. Alright, it should start any second now. Staff Ghost is a 112.9 and that should be easy. In fact, the goal time is 106. And there we go for the first strategy. Yeah, no explanation needed. Yeah, it's a very easy strategy. Let's watch it anyway, and I'll try to explain it, whatever there is to talk about. I'm choosing the Twin Orito at +5 settings here, which is a bit slower in the acceleration than the Staff Ghost. The Staff Ghost is the white cat, but also should give you a good indication that it should be easy enough to beat if you pick the Twin Orito. The ramp is of course important. On the first lap with this strategy, there's no way to lift off. You cannot build enough speed. But on lap 2 and 3, even though this ramp is very narrow, you win a lot of time if you can go fast enough to dive onto the ramp. And the ramp is going to be a very narrow section of road, so that's going to be challenging. On this first lap, I'm not going so fast, so I'm landing on the earliest possible point on the road, where I can keep a more or less straight line through the zigzag section. You can fly over that just a little bit further also, if it's easier for you. Yeah, take the dash plate, go around this section. Again, the same principles as always apply. Try the side attack first and then steer into corners. Keep straight lines. This is an annoying jump for this strategy because you cannot do anything with it, you just lose speed. So I'm just holding up on the control stick there to dive down as quickly as possible. At the start of lap 2 you want to immediately start with your boosting. I'm using 3 boosts and this will make sure that you lift off here. I'm holding, initially when I lift off I hold straight up on the control stick because you do not want to fly out too far. Ideally you want to land on the down sloping part of the ramp. If you land much further on the ramp, when sloping uphill, you will lose a lot more speed with your landing impact. So those are some small tricks to win just that extra bit of time. You will also have much more speed on the following big jump over the zigzag section, so you can land behind the zigzag pattern. Here I boost straight over the dirt zone, because the dirt zone will not affect you when you're boosting. And at this point you really do not want to boost because this dive will just kill your speed. Luckily there are some very useful ways for that little hill there, but we're going to need a much different strategy to really take advantage of it. Yeah, so keep on boosting at the start of lap 3 as well, because we want to lift off. And we want to build up as much speed as possible in this section. Yeah, control stick is all the way neutral position for this, the majority of this dive for me. Boost once after landing. You can keep your grip if you just gradually steer here. Use a side attack here, steer to the inside again, stay on the inside, use some side attacks. You do not want to lift off here. Boost across the dirt zone, side attack, and finish the race. Simple enough, but it's probably not going to be so simple to optimize this enough to beat the 106 goal. It's not an easy goal. But considering the difficulty of the following strategies that I will show you on Firefield, I think this is a good goal to go for, to get really familiar with the track layout and the good boosting spots and so on. And also being able to dive onto that ramp is a key thing to master when learning this strategy. And there we go. Now we're gonna go with a very steep increase in difficulty for strategy 2. Strategy 2 will get in potential a top 10 time on this track. It is very hard to optimize, but you can win a lot of speed with this. There's also some choices to make. I had a difficult time choosing myself if I wanted to show a strategy easier than this one first. But it's there's nothing new in that strategy that you don't see here already. There's just some things that you can choose not to do to make it a lot easier for yourself and to learn this one. And then along the way you can start adding in the difficult tricks. So let's watch it first. So there we go. Staff Ghost lapped, 49 seconds. In potential, this has the potential to get an incredibly fast time already. So let's analyze it. 5 out of 10 difficulty makes this the hardest strategy 2 of them all. So we're starting off with a hard real drift on the left side. Of course, you take the Bloodhawk with full acceleration settings, get a good drifting angle, and now we're going into a left corner. So you have to keep adjusting your drifting angle along this path here, bounce into the rail a little bit to keep building up speed. And if you do that efficiently, you can lift off in lap 1 already, and this alone saves several seconds. You want to dive down on the downsloping part of the ramp, as usual. Now, I'll pause it here. At first, I would advise you to do the diving strategy as I just showed in strategy 1. Dive down past the zigzag pattern and just keep on going like that on the drifting strategy. You will already win a lot of time if you can just get this lift off onto this ramp in lap 1 already. Several seconds. If you're getting good at this strategy, you can do a double tap dive at this point. And to set up that double tap dive is gonna be very tricky. How much speed is required to lift off? 1k-ish, around 1000 kilometers per hour, I think. I would say, I don't know off the top of my head, probably above 960 at the very least. But you want to aim for about 1000 kilometers per hour. Of course, it helps if you hold down, but that's not optimal. And not really necessary if you can keep a good drifting angle. So let's move on to how you set up this double tap dive. This zigzag section is gonna be a pain in the ass, because you cannot just fly out to the left and dive to the right, down to the right. The game will make you crash because you will miss checkpoints in the zigzag pattern. So what you want to do is set up an air drift to the left. And for that I use a right side attack. I hold down right initially to move to the right just a little bit and get a little bit of height as well. And then smoothly turn the control stick all the way around to the up left position. And to eventually move the nose of the ship in down left position, ready for a dive to the right. So along this air drift you will drift to the left, of course, in a curve, and get that checkpoint to count along the way. So at this point I start tapping the R button into a drift, and I hold down right for a split second. Move the control stick to up left. Passing here, you can see way down below on the track below you can see that corner to the right, that point there at the curve. That's a pain in the ass because that's the one you need to be close enough to make it count. If you go straight left, you will crash, and even if you are practicing this strategy, the odds are you will crash quite a bit by just missing that checkpoint barely. It's a common problem. So let's say you make it to this point. At this point I'm holding upright on the control stick while mashing the R button already. You have a lot of momentum going to the left, and it takes a little bit of time for the momentum to come to zero, so you can start diving down to the right. As you can see, I'm flying to the left just a little bit, and all the way here I have the control stick in the up position, mashing the R button, and along this dive I'm moving the control stick slightly upright to aim for the ideal landing position on the inside of the road close to the rail. Keep on mashing the R button all the way along this section of road, all the way up to the dash plate. Keep on mashing that R button. Get the dash plate. Now here you can just stay on the road, or you can, take a slight shortcut, whatever you want to do. Side attack along this corner. We cannot really take advantage of this hill just yet, we're not going fast enough. But you can land into a drift. drift to the left. You can do a long rail drift on the left side here to build up your speed, and you will completely refill in lap 2 as long as you exit the drift at the start of lap 2, go through the refill zone, keep on boosting here, because we really want to build up a lot of speed here to fly out and dive onto the downsloping part of the ramp. This is going to be tricky at first, because you have a lot of sideways momentum and you want to land on this narrow piece of ramp. Same idea, right side attack, air drift to the left, time your right side attacks and the control stick movement so you will land on the inside here. This dive is optional because this is a difficult dive and you can choose not to do it or do it in a very small way to not take too much risk. Boost drift along this corner over the dirt. This is a very nice corner to drift and build up a lot of win a lot of time on the staff ghost. On this section I'm actually using a tiny double tap dive for one side attack into a drift. You can also just land and drift, doesn't matter. But optimally you would do a tiny double tap dive into a drift. Keep on boosting for this section. Yeah, lap 3 is more or less the same as lap 2. Side attack right, fly out to the left and dive down to the right. So as you can see, doing that side attack into a drift, it delays the going to the left just a little bit. And that delay is enough to fly out far enough to make that checkpoint in a zigzag pattern on the road count. Of course, try to keep your drifting lines as optimal as possible. Take advantage of the width of the road, and at this point say hello to the staff ghost and goodbye and finish the race. 23 seconds faster than the staff ghost. Yeah, so the thing you will not do is max out your speedometer, but that will come. Yeah, so you can definitely choose not to do this strategy as I showed it. Just do not bother with the double tap dive, do a normal dive. The only difference I would do for the rest of the track is at the dash plate before the dirt section of the track, corner to the right. From that dash plate onwards, drift to the right and then switch drift into a left drift along the dirt zone. So drift a little bit more on that section, and you can win a lot of time on the strategy one already. And when you start to max out your times, try to add in a double tap dive. You're going to need to be really good at that double tap dive to be able to even attempt this one, strategy 3. Is there a video of the world record, the 49 second run on the PAL version of Daniel online? Yes, there is. There's a site called wrvids.com, so worldrecordvideos.com, but it's spelled wrvids.com. There's a section for F0x, and there's somewhere hidden on it, you can access it, everyone should be able to access it. There's somewhere hidden on it is an archive of most of the F0x records from all the times that were at one point a world record. So other times are not preserved, but world records are, including the world record for Firefield. Alright. Well, so yeah, let's move on to this strategy. 8 out of 10. Usually strategy 4 on most tracks is already at 8 out of 10. This is going to be amongst the hardest strategies in the game already. But it can go a lot crazier, and we'll see that later. So let's get started. So there you go, 42 seconds. Believe it or not, this run, TAS run, is not as fast as the world record. The world record is faster than this. So even if you do all this perfectly, you will not be able to touch the world record. You need to do something more than this. Imagine that. So there's a lot of extra dives going on compared to strategy 2. A lot of them are very tough. And what makes this strategy an 8 out of 10 is it is one big chain reaction. You need the speed from dive 1 to do dive 2. You need the speed from dive 2 to do dive 3, etc. So it's one big chain reaction. You cannot just master one dive and be fine. You need to master them all. And you need to do them all really well to be able to pull this off. So, let's go. So it starts off easy enough, wheel drift on the left rail. But then already on the lift off onto the ramp there's going to be a big difference. Because you can actually set up a big double tap dive here. For that, bounce into the rail at this point where you normally lift off. At this point, I'm just bouncing into the rail holding left. And at this point, I've become airborne sort of perpendicular to the rail at a 90-degree angle. And now you can see I'm getting airborne. I'm just starting to lift off. And I move the control stick via the up left position from the drifting to the left. I move the control stick via up left to up and to up right. Because we really need to turn around to be able to land on that ramp. And that's going to be a very tough and timing dependent double tap dive. Because both the road is very narrow and it's very easy to crash at this point. If you're too low or too slow with turning or whatever, the game will make you crash even before you can attempt this dive. But this is not the hardest double tap dive in the world. We'll get to that later. But this is going to be a lot of practice, but luckily it's at the start of lap 1, so you can get in a lot of tries quickly. So you can see at this point I'm just holding A and up left. Yeah, and now I'm starting to tap R here. Now I'm fully upright on the control stick and I'm gradually to slightly upright, holding straight up. And at this point I'm only holding up. My diving angle is good enough to land on the ramp. But you can see I'm bouncing around. It's not possible to land on that ramp at a very good speed without hitting the rail. You can do that if you fly out to the side just a little bit, but you will not build up anywhere near as much speed as I did. So you're just gonna have to crash into the rail and hope it doesn't get too bad. If you go fast enough here, I'm going 1800, I think you need 1600 minimum. Tap the R button, move the control stick fairly down to the down right position here and to the upright position here to set up a good double tap diving angle for double tap dive Z. At this point I'm holding up on the control stick and moving to up left to land back on the road here. You can move cleanly around this corner if you land in a good spot. And now we can do a big double tap dive from this ramp. I'm using right side attack here. I'm moving just slightly down right. Now the control stick is in a neutral position. At first I'm just holding down left for just a split second. Then I'm tapping the Z button, move the control stick really down left to the up left position. Now the ship is in an absolutely perfect angle for a double tap dive right, holding the control stick up. And this is the low dive form. You cannot really accelerate much faster through the air than this. And in a perfect scenario, you can enter lap 2 at 1800 kilometers per hour or so. And you're going to need to be able to do lap strategy 4. Over this strategy, because I'm going so fast, I'm just side attacking through the first turn, diving straight into the ramp. And yeah, sort of repeat. Big double tap dive here. This is the same as strategy 2. Land on the inside here. I'm going over 2000 kilometers per hour, so boost is not effective until this point, and I start boosting as soon as it drops under 2000. Same idea for setup for this dive. If you get a lot of height, by very gradually move the control stick fairly down right to the upright position, you can build more speed there. Same idea for this one, but your takeoff speed is faster, so you can set up a massive dive into lap 2. Look at this stuff. Oh, well over 2000 at the entry of lap 3. I'm starting to boost here when the speed drops below 2000 kilometers per hour. I'm not bothering with drifting because drifting is not effective if you go over 1600 kilometers per hour. Boost drifting is not effective and side attacking is faster. Again, setting up this dive. So as you can see, you need to land this dive at a very high speed to be able to have enough speed to lift off here. And you need to land this dive at a very good speed to be able to lift off at the last dive. So it's all a big chain reaction of dives. You can do a suicide finish. By that we do a left side attack and move the control stick from this point on to fight the down left position to the up left position for the second side attack, and then just move the control stick up and right side attack. As you can see, the setting up of these dives is very similar for all of them. The timing, when you should start them, etc., that can differ quite a bit. I'm really diving down on the suicide finish in the optimal way. You can dive just a little bit less down and it will be easier to make it. My cat is demanding attention. 42 seconds. Not enough for the world record, but enough for a heck of a good time. And I would say, if you want to learn this strategy, build it up easily. Build it up with that first double tap dive from strategy 2. My cat's name is Minus. And yes, do the big double tap dive around the zigzag section first. Try to do the double tap dive around the dirt sound. Try to do then add them one by one. Then try to do the double tap dive from onto the ramp in lap 1. And finally, I really would do this one last. Do the double tap dive from the hill at the end of the track. And because that's really the end of the chain reaction. And you will only be able to pull that off if you can arrive at that point at a very high speed already. So this is one of the toughest strategies in the game already. But now we're moving on to the hardest strategy in the game. 10 out of 10! Exclamation mark. Very, very hard. It's a chain reaction of dives. Actually, lap 1 is identical to the lap 1 I just showed. So no difference there. But lap 2 and 3 are going to be quite a bit different. So let's watch it first.
Critical! It's a new record!
So there we go. Sub 40 seconds, 39 seconds potential. The hardest strategy in the game. Why is it the hardest strategy in the game? I can explain that. The end of the chain reaction used to be that big dive at the end of the little hill, at the end of the lap. But there's some more links to the chain. In fact, the entire track has now turned into a chain reaction. Because you need a lot of speed, and I mean a lot of speed, from the dive, from the little hill into lap 2, to be able to lift off early before the ramp, to set up a big double tap dive that skips the ramp in lap 2. And the same thing for lap 3, but it's easier because you have boost. But you do not have boost from lap 1 to lap 2, so it's gonna be hell of a job to get enough speed to lift off in lap 2 already. So yeah, let's play it back and analyze. Yeah, Daniel, I personally think this is the hardest strategy because the entire track is a chain reaction. There are harder strategies that I can think of, but they are not being used by any player that I know of. So, at the start of lap 2, we're so I'll pause for a second. At the start of lap 2, I'm of course boosting because you want to preserve as much speed as possible, of course. And as you can see, I'm going 1600 into this corner. I'm actually quite close to the ramp already. And that is about what you need to lift off. You can go just a little bit slower and then you'll still lift off, but I would say over 1500 probably, minimum. Very tough. At this point I'm holding down and I'm only slightly holding left. Mostly just holding down because at first I need to build up a lot of height. With all the momentum I have, I'm gonna try to get as much height as possible first. So I'm only holding slightly to the left but mostly down while mashing the Z button. As you can see, I'm mostly just flying up. I'm not going far to the left of the road. Only at this point, when I've built up quite a bit of height, I'm starting to, as in the usual fashion when you set up double tap dive, I'm moving the control stick just smoothly from the down left position to the up left position to flip the ship over with the nose of the ship in a down left way. A good trick to use at this point, as you can see, the road has disappeared. Another thing that makes this much more difficult than it has to be. But you can still see one thing. You can see a dash plate. And that is very useful in F-Zero X, that dash plates, even though the road has sort of disappeared, the dash plates are always visible much further in the distance. So the dash plate is of course where the ramp is. It's near the end of the ramp. So that's a good indicator to where you should be diving down. So at this point, setting up, I'm high enough and I'm setting up my double tap diving angle. Control stick down left to up left. See, I'm moving a little bit to the left of that dash plate. And at this point, I'm just I'm starting to measure R. And I move the control stick just slightly up and slightly right initially. But soon enough, my diving trajectory will be already perfect. And that's when I just let the control stick sit in its neutral position, more or less. So I'm smashing R at this point, holding slightly up and slightly right. Yeah, and only at this point already I'm only making minor adjustments. But it's very hard to predict where you're going to end up with this double tap dive. So I'm more or less neutral position all the way from this point onwards. And only at this point, when I know where I'm gonna land, I'm holding up and up right while mashing R all the way to go along this corner. And it is possible to go around cleanly without touching the walls, but that's going to prove to be a major challenge for anyone trying this. I have landed this dive myself, but I always crashed in the wall. So this is another cool thing. For anyone practicing this strategy, I would highly recommend doing the strategy from strategy 3 to set up this double tap dive. So hold the control stick slightly down right, get up a lot of height, flip it around, double tap dive into lap 3. However, this doing an air drift to the left into a double tap dive has a faster setup time. So it's a few tenths faster just in the setup time to do it like this. So optimally, you can do an air drift into a double tap dive. You need to go hella fast to make that work, because of course you need to go fast enough to lift off in lap 3 again for this big double tap dive. But because of the boost, that's quite a bit easier. Again, the setup is the same as in lap 2. It's very hard to predict where you're going to end up. Optimally, you get cleanly through that corner, and you will also often get into a little hop where you lift off from the track, and that is very dangerous because you can lose a lot of speed or crash in the rail. Boost and suicide finish, and that's it already. A very short track like this. "33 seconds faster than the Steph Ghost." Steph Ghost was lapped already at the start of lap 3. And sub 40 seconds. In potential, at least. So there you go, that's Firefield. Any questions? Yeah, so I'll stress again, and Daniel can Daniel knows this. You need this strategy to be able to beat the world record. Anything less is not going to be sufficient. Yeah, so this is 10 out of 10 for a reason. This is crazy hard. It's one big chain reaction, and even if you know what to do, it's going to be major practice to get the timing down right and get these dives to work well enough so you can even attempt them. Especially the ramp skipping DTD. It's very hard to predict where you're going to end up with. It's very hard to get a lift off in the first place. I've landed it myself, but I've never been able to land it well enough to take advantage of it. I have taken advantage of it for my lap record, but that's easier than in a chain reaction with from lap 1 to 2. A replay of the video. If anyone's gonna grind out this world record, this is in my opinion, the best world record in a game. And Daniel may or may not agree. I think he agrees. You need this strategy to beat the world record, and that's a rarity because most of the time there's easier strategies that still at least have the potential faster than the world record. So let's watch it. Wait a second. Let's watch it in real time again, just to get a feeling, and because it's fun. So Daniel, do you have any tips for us mortals